Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, and I am a volunteer and one of several trustees on the board of a very small grassroots NGO called the Free Shop. Our team operate in Lebanon. Our aim is to relieve poverty among refugees. Now, I'm sure from the news that most of you are aware of some of the problems facing Lebanon. It's 5 years into financial collapse, and it is the world with the highest number of refugees per capita. Sorry, is the country. The UN estimates that 25% of Lebanon's population are refugees. And to put that into numbers, as of this year, that's 1.5 million Syrian refugees and 480,000 Palestinian refugees. Now, staggeringly, the UN also estimates that 90% of refugees live below the poverty line. And specifically, this means people barely affording rent in tent settlements such as this and food, making investing in improving their prospects, let alone buying essential items, impossible. And it is this line, this complete lack of resources, that perpetuates poverty. So that's why we created the Free Shop in Bekaa Valley, which is where the majority of refugees in Lebanon live. We operate in Bar Elias, which is just here next to the Syrian border, in a network of other material aid NGOs so that we don't duplicate work. Some distribute medical aid, some solar panels, and us household essential items. Other NGOs send people who need clothes to us. We send them people with medical needs, for example, such as new mothers, and so on. Now, if our name hasn't already given it away, our distribution project centers around our Free Shop, which we opened in 2021, where on average about 15 families come a day and shop, all for free. So our stock is mostly secondhand, and it includes clothing, shoes, blankets, and mattresses, as well as hygiene items and school supplies. And whereas other distribution projects will sort of pre-assemble packages out of aid, meaning that people don't get freedom of choice, often that means that aid isn't best allocated according to need. So we have a unique token system where we assign items a price. So, for example, shoes might be 2 items, and families will receive 3 items per person, so they can come and spend them in our shop as they like. And that has received really positive feedback from our beneficiaries, and that's actually part of the reason that we saw fit to create the Free Shop. And so, as I'm sure you can imagine, we're very popular. And to ensure that we spread our impact, we'll invite families, settlement by settlement, to come to our shop. So we believe that we really are best placed to deliver this work. First, because of our 5 years of experience. Last year, for example, we distribute about 800 pieces of clothing alone per month. Second, because all of our staff are actually local Syrian refugees, and we believe this fosters agency and it enables our operations to be responsive as they really know the local needs. And third, because of our shop being in a relatively safe area, and therefore it's a main area that displaced people will migrate to in escalations of conflict, including since the recent war with Iran and Israel. And over the years, these attributes have naturally positioned our model of work to evolve in emergency situations, but never more than in the last 3 months, which brings me to talk about our emergency project. So, in the last 3 months, our team has witnessed an exceptional increase in the number of families, almost all of whom have had exceptional needs, with most families arriving on foot with no more than the clothes that they are wearing. And therefore, as an exceptional measure, we've rented local buildings such as this one to run as shelters, wherein we continue to operate our aid distributions. Now, the reasons for this are very complex, and to touch on them, we need to rewind to the end of 2024, when the regime fell in Syria. After this, and for all of last year, a lot of Syrian families left Bekaa Valley to go back to Syria, and along with them, accordingly, lots of NGOs. However, since the start of the escalation, or sort of the escalation of the conflict in the last 3 months, large numbers of Syrian families have returned, and with them and when they've returned this time, there are far fewer NGOs there to help, and also there are much more strained resources because there have also been a huge number of internally displaced people, and Lebanese people, I mean. Now, the important thing to say is that there are different levels of protection for the Lebanese. For them, the Ministry of Social Affairs will permit them to use schools as shelters, but Syrian Palestinian refugees cannot. Building further tent settlements is not an option, and it was forbidden by the government a few years ago. And furthermore, it sort of used to be the UNHCR that would distribute the wood and the tarpaulins and things like that to make the shelters. And since they were under government restrictions, people wouldn't even have the means to actually make shelters. Also, no big INGOs, so international NGOs such as the Red Cross or again the UN, actually run their own shelters because they have not managed to organize getting the internal permissions to open them. And so it's because we are small and flexible that we can fill the gaps that they can't. And they, being by NGOs such as the Red Cross and the UN, will give us advice and support. So, for example, the Red Cross gives us aid to distribute in our shelters, and the UNHCR sends us people needing shelter. And so it has been with another local NGO, Endless Medical Advantage, that we have opened 4 shelters in the last 3 months, hosting about 60 families. So that's about 320 displaced people. However, like I've also said, this emergency project has been exceptional, and we cannot sustain these shelters financially, which is why I'm here today. With £10,000, we could keep a shelter of about 120 people open for another 2 months. So rent costs us about $2,000 a month, and then an extra £3,000 monthly would help us to cover things like food, baby milk, nappies, hygiene items, crutches, everything. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I'll leave you with this photo of a baby girl who was recently born in our shelter.